So, Berto, do you know who Harvey Weinstein is?
Oh, yeah.
So I thought we would talk about him today and sexual harassment and sexual assaults.
That is the hot topic of the month or year.
This is the Psychology in Seattle podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Kirk Honda. I'm a therapist and a professor. Who are you, Humberto?
My name is Humberto Castañeda, and I guide people to Mount Rainier.
So Harvey Weinstein, this episode is going to be a little epic. I have quite a bit of notes here on a lot of things. We're not going to just talk about Weinstein. We're going to talk about other people. And I'm going to include a couple patron emails that are very relevant to this. I'm going to have one at the end that is quite a shocker. So for decades, in case you're under a rock or this is 20 years from now, Harvey Weinstein has been harassing and raping women without any significant consequence over the past, 20 plus years, 30 years or something.
It's incredible.
And recently, we're now in November 2017, many women have come forward in the last couple months and reported that he sexually harassed them, sexually assaulted them, or even raped them.
Right.
So let's just give a little background on Weinstein, because I was peripherally aware of who he was, but I'm guessing a lot of listeners don't know about him and his career. So what do you know about Weinstein, bro?
Yeah, I had heard the name Weinstein for years, mostly in connection with movies I actually really liked. And I always thought of the Weinstein brothers as sort of rebels, like they were sort of bucking the usual studio system and trying some risky bets on risky projects. And so I always thought like, oh, those guys are cool, man. And then when I watched Entourage, they had sort of a Harvey Weinstein-like. They had this Harvey, but it wasn't Weinstein. It was a different last name. And in the show, he was very mercurial and very like, he would yell and get very upset too. But, he wasn't sexually harassing anyone in the show. And so I that's what I knew. I'm like, oh, these guys, these brothers have been in the industry forever. I like almost tons of movies that they put out, and I had this impression that they were cool because they took chances with projects that might not have gotten greenlit otherwise.
Right. Harvey Weinstein and his brother Bob Weinstein co-founded Miramax in 1979, and as you're pointing out, many will say that Harvey Weinstein had a talent for spotting good scripts with good directors and good actors and actresses, even though they weren't famous yet, right?
Right.
And he did take a lot of chances with a lot of movies and was extremely successful, even though he took a lot of chances.
Yeah.
His movies have earned how many Oscar nominations?
Oh, yikes. 20.
300.
I was going to say 100, so I obviously lowballed it, but 300?
300 Oscar nominations.
That is incredible.
And some of those are him because the producer is the one, if it's best movie.
Yeah, right.
Can you think of any, and that's just Oscar, that's not Golden Globes.
Yeah, all the other awards.
Yeah. Can you think of any other famous producers other than the Weinsteins, just off the top of your head?
Producers? Yeah, what's Kathleen Kennedy?
Yeah.
And, Spielberg is a producer on a ton of stuff.
Yeah.
Producers. Well, nowadays, like Mark Wahlberg's a famous producer. George Clooney's a famous producer.
Yeah,
but not to that extent. Not
they've produced a handful of movies,
yeah.
But famous just for being a producer. Kennedy, Spielberg, yes,
but he's also a director.
But you would know him anyway.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. So my point is like
there's not a lot of famous household names.
Right.
Producers.
Harvey Weinstein is one of them.
Yeah.
At the Oscars, who is thanked the most? So they did an analysis since 1966.
I'd like to thank, and of course, Harvey Weinstein. Thank you.
Right. So who's been the most thanked person or entity in
him?
Well, no.
Okay. Who has been? And in the Oscars, who would be? It'd be. Oh man.
Someone similar to Weinstein.
Someone similar, like an agent, maybe.
No. You wouldn't think an agent that
but it's
much.
a name I know. Like.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
In fact, we've already said his name.
Oh, okay. So Spielberg.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Spielberg is number 1 and Weinstein's number 2.
Really?
Guess who number 3 is?
Who would be number 3?
This I would classify as an entity.
As an entity. Oh, so one of the studios.
No, God.
Oh, okay. God, these are trick questions. Okay.
So
Spielberg, Weinstein, God. So they're above God.
Right. You got James Cameron, Peter Jackson, and George Lucas.
Wow.
Can you think of some of the movies that Weinstein has produced or executive produced?
Good Will Hunting.
Yeah. What else?
I think, wasn't it Fight Club?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay. Well, there was one with... Seven.
Yep, 7.
Yeah.
It's hard to remember. It's hard to remember the producer. You know, you think director,
right?
But
I'm thinking like Miramax, right? Like,
yeah.
But I don't. I know that a ton of them. When I was looking at the list, I'm like, oh yeah, love that one. Yep, love that one.
Right. It's sort of a section of film that doesn't get enough credit because producers sometimes have a tremendous amount of. A lot of the success depends on the producer
because they assemble the team, they assemble the pieces, they make it work, they clear roadblocks,
right? And they might even be involved in script choices and editing choices and marketing choices and casting choices. You know, so producers are not often. You know, it's hard to know exactly on each movie who's has a
Bridget Jones' Diary.
I don't think so. So Reservoir Dogs, True Romance, Pulp Fiction, The English Patient, Scream, Jackie Brown, Good Will Hunting, Shakespeare in Love, Cider House Rules, Chocolat, the Lord of the Rings movies, Gangs of New York, Chicago, Kill Bill, The Aviator, Sin City, Inglourious Basterds, The King's Speech, The Artist, Silver Linings Playbook, Django Unchained, Sing Street, which was recent, and Lion.
I haven't heard of any of those.
Yeah. And that's just probably like 20% of the movies that those are just highlights.
What an insane amount of money they've generated.
So Weinstein, Harvey Weinstein, was either the producer or executive producer on those movies and many others. Okay. So that's the background. Several women have accused Weinstein of rape. And so I just want to start with that. And trigger alert to people, I'm not going to be talking super in detail, but there's going to be a couple stories that I'm going to tell that are in the media that some of these women have come forward and I'm going to, it's not going to get super graphic, but there's going to be some talk about it. So you should know.
By the way, all these stories that have been coming out have broadened my understanding of the word rape.
Yeah.
Because I used to think that rape was like intercourse.
Yeah.
Like, you know, you have to have forceful intercourse. And I thought other things were like harassment or
bothersome.
Well, no, I mean, certainly illegal and everything. But I was just not aware of what rape actually meant. I thought it was literally, well, a thing went into a hole.
Well, not even a thing, a penis.
No, because it could be like a broomstick could be a rape. You could rape someone with a broomstick. But I just assumed that it had to be like an actual.
Well, are you talking about the legal definition?
Yeah, I was thinking that that's what a rape was.
I actually don't know the legal definition. So, but in my circle, the word rape has many different definitions.
I see.
You might consider it the upper end of the spectrum of severity regarding sexual assaults.
Yeah.
But, you know, there's no real working definition, you know.
Right.
That's why a lot of people don't use the word rape. They'll use the word sexual
assault.
Yeah, because that's more kind of intuitive in terms of what it means. So I'm just gonna name the names. Part of the reason how I set up this episode as we move forward is based on the sheer volume of not only Harvey Weinstein's victims, but also the sheer volume involved in our society, particularly among these high-profile cases, which are just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, think about all the other people. Someone who works at Microsoft who's like sexually harassing all these people, like he's not going to get outed.
And at the same time, something that I've thought about in these days is that there must be a lot more good guys than bad guys.
Yeah.
And now I'm not saying I am aware that in most professional realms, even quote unquote good guys do sort of sexist behavior, you know, maybe without knowing that they're being sexist or whatever.
We're all unknowingly sexist.
Right. But I'm actually talking about like Weinstein seems like an aberration even among his peers. And even among guys that traditionally you think of as like maybe womanizers or something.
Yeah.
Like even they're like, what the you know? It's crazy.
Well, I don't know how they're reacting, but
I just mean
yeah.
their public reactions.
Yeah, I mean the typical stories that we hear are things like the Donald Trump stories, where he walks into the pageant changing room, he grabs someone, blah blah blah. He pushes a woman up against a wall and tries to kiss her, and she wiggles away. Weinstein is a serial rapist.
Yeah,
he is he's just shy of murdering people. Do you know what I mean? He's on the level of Bill Cosby. You know what I mean? Like these two guys are.
Is he?
Yeah. So Weinstein.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let me tell you. So Natasha Malta in 2008, Weinstein barged into her hotel room and raped her.
Wow.
So the people who aren't famous are the bigger cases.
Yeah.
Because you're hearing like other cases like where he really is trying to be very forceful and the woman gets away. Well, in this instance, Weinstein just barged into her hotel room and proceeded to overpower her and rape her in the classic sense of rape.
That's crazy.
Lizette Anthony in the 1980s raped her in her home. Dominique Hewitt. Weinstein invited her to his hotel room to talk about her career, which is a common MO that you'll emerge. So anyway, Weinstein invited her into his hotel room to talk about her career. He pressured her into giving him a massage. Weinstein forcibly took off her clothes and performed oral sex on her. Then he masturbated in front of her. Asia Argento in 1997. Paz de la Huerta in 2010. Hope Exine d'Amour in the 1970s. Mimi Haleyi in, I'm sure I'm not pronouncing these right, 2006. Lucia Evans. This story I want to, because she's come forward and really told a full story, and so this is one of those detailed stories. And the reason why I debated whether or not I wanted to read these kind of details, because there's a part of it that's sort of voyeuristic and almost like penthouse forum-y in some ways. But I wrote it in I summarized it in such a way that I think people need to know what this means. Because when you hear about, oh, he raped someone, it's like, well, what does that mean exactly?
Just to the point, I obviously hadn't heard enough of the details, because in my mind, he had done, which of course is already horrible, but he had done things like look at my penis, touch it. And whereas I was thinking, well, Bill Cosby like drugged and fully raped, but everything you're describing right now is like, oh no, he broke in, raped, etc. Like he's just as bad. Right. And my point earlier was that what's interesting is maybe it'll come out, but I haven't heard anything about his brother. Right. Like there haven't been any accusations about his brother. Right. There's not any accusation about George Lucas or Steven Spielberg or all these. So it's not just that, oh, you get powerful, all of a sudden you start raping people. No. These people, there's something aberrant about them.
Well, yes, I mean, we could speculate about that later maybe, or maybe we should do that now. We should also point out that women sexually assault and rape and abuse and use their power. It's just much more of a man behavior on average, but women certainly do it too, not only to men, but also to women. So that should be acknowledged, although every story I'm going to tell you that is in the news is about men who are the abusers.
Yeah, there was the Mariah Carey stuff that just came out, but but like I was just listening to a interview with I forget the guy's name, but did you ever watch the Walking Dead show?
Yep.
Remember he was in season 1. He was the guy that is sleeping with the wife, the main wife. And
he always plays a sleazebag and everything.
Right. And then he was in that movie Cry Baby, or Baby Driver, I mean.
Yeah.
Baby Driver.
He's a sleazebag in that.
Okay, so he was talking about how when he was on set with Kevin Spacey, he idolized Kevin Spacey growing up because he had seen him in this play, and he was just like, he idolized him. But then on set, he immediately got a really bad vibe, felt that he was a bully and that he was sort of abusive to a lot of the male people in the cast. And he told that to his friends and kind of family and stuff before any of this stuff came out. But he didn't know any of that stuff. He just like, that's how he felt. But at the same time, he said that all these other heroes of his that he's had the pleasure to meet and work with didn't disappoint. In fact, they became more beautiful in his eyes. Like people like George Clooney, Brad Pitt, Bob De Niro, all these other people. So all of them super powerful, very successful, also growing up in the same time frames, and they don't become monsters.
Yeah. If you empirically somehow added up all of the Harvey Weinstein level power people and Kevin Spacey level people, and then you took the amount of people who were like Harvey Weinstein, or at the very least Kevin Spacey, then I'm guessing, you're going to have basically the same ratio you see in your personal life of assholes. You know,
it's just that those guys have more access to, you know, because of their powerful positions.
Right.
They have more opportunities and access to abuse their.
Well, and they have when they're caught, it's more visible. You know, because these kinds of sexual harassment things and consequences are happening all the time. And so, anyway, so so Lucia Evans, 2004, Lucia Evans wanted to be an actress. Weinstein began calling her. He found out about her, got her headshot or something, and Weinstein began calling her late at night and asking to meet with her. She could tell that, you know, he wanted to hook up with her, and she wasn't into that, so she declined to meet with him. Later, an assistant of Weinstein's called her to set up a daytime meeting at the Miramax office in Manhattan, Tribeca. Lucia Evans was assured that a woman would be present, so she went. When Lucia Evans arrived for the meeting, the building was full of people, so she felt like, oh, okay, this is good. But she was led by an assistant to an office with Weinstein, and he was alone.
Wow.
So suddenly she's like, oh, I'm in an office alone with Weinstein. This is kind of weird, but I'm in an office. I'm at Miramax, the office. So, you know, I'm not in his hotel room. Things should be fine. And they proceed to start talking, and he starts to flatter her while at the same time putting her down, saying she needs to lose some weight.
Oh, what do they call that? Negging?
Yeah. It'd be funny if Harvey Weinstein somehow like was into that whole pickup artist thing. And he began to make implication, or he started implying that he's going to make her into a movie star. Then he pulls out his penis.
Wait. What?
Yeah.
How do we go from point A to point B?
That's how these stories go. He's very quick and
quick on the draw.
My assumption is, okay, by 2004, he's been at this for 30 years, 20 years, since the 70s.
Yeah.
So what is that? 30 years.
Yeah.
So he's been raping and sexually assaulting. I mean, something like 77 women have come forward, but you got to figure
those are the ones that came forward.
Yeah, you got to figure there's probably like 10 times that he actually did something to.
And there could be a whole bunch of them that ended up doing stuff they were not comfortable with, but it did help their career, and they sort of feel like they don't want to talk about it. They feel guilty about it, all these other things.
Right. Or they're just like, I mean, think about if it was you.
Yeah.
And you're one of his victims. Do you really want the media attention in your life? You know, do you want to be, do you want that to be on your epitaph?
No.
You know, you're one of the Weinstein victims.
The only exception would be if no one had come out like pre the waterfall, and I was feeling like, that's it. Someone has to say something. I guess it'll be me.
Yeah. I mean, at this point you're like, well, there's enough corroborating evidence that I don't need to add.
I don't want to be,
because it's, you know, it's a pain in the ass. So yeah, it's got to be like 10 times this. Is just a guess, but anyway. So by this time it's been 30 years, and he's sexually assaulted and abused. Let's just estimate 500 people by this point. Like, so.
Well, because it'll range from like, hey, honey tits, all the way to like, I'm raping you.
Right. And, you know, as a sort of strange analogy, when I was in high school, I don't think I've ever talked about this. I'll tone it down a little bit, but we used to go on these nighttime missions with my friends, and we would TP other friends' houses.
Right.
And the first time we TP'd a house, my heart was pounding.
TP is triple penetration, right?
God. Toilet papering a house, and it rains a lot in Seattle, so that's the worst. When you TP a house and it rains, you know.
Disgusting.
And so we would the first couple times we did it, and I remember noticing by like the 5th time we did it, my heart wasn't racing at all. It was just like like okay.
Another thing to do.
Yeah, I wasn't because we were never caught.
I see.
And I realized that no one looks outside of their house. No,
right.
Everyone's windows, the shades are drawn.
Yeah.
And everyone's just watching TV in the den.
Yeah.
And so you can walk around the entire house with impunity because no one is looking.
Right.
No one's taking as long as
certainly no one had video cameras installed back then.
Right. Right. Or even those motion detectors.
Sensors,
yeah.
right.
Anyway, so by this point, Weinstein is, so he just pulls out his penis. He's just like, let's this is what I came here to do,
right.
and so let's make it happen. And he grabs her head. He's a large man.
Yeah.
He's got to be what, like 300 pounds?
I don't know, at least 250.
He's large. He's a large dude, He's like, anyway, pulls out his penis, grabs her head and starts shoving it towards his penis. And she's like saying, no, I don't want to, let go of me. And again, he's much larger than her. And she tries to get away, but he overpowers her. And she made him perform oral sex on him.
Oh, he made her perform. Yeah.
Yeah. What was I doing?
You said she made him.
Oh, he made him perform oral sex on him, and
you're getting your pronouns mixed up.
God damn it. Gender's just a construct, man.
I know it's a fluid thing.
And so this is horrible. I mean, just imagine that.
Yeah.
The reason why I'm telling this story is not to make jokes about gender fluidity, but imagine you want to be a movie actress.
Right.
You come to Miramax, you're all excited, you got your best outfit on, you're assured that women are going to be there, and then all of a sudden, boom, you're in an office with Weinstein himself, just by himself, and you're just like, okay.
But you have this mix of like, I got an audience with the guy, like this could make my career right now.
Yeah, but things aren't going quite well.
Not quite right.
I feel sort of weird. Okay, he pulls out his penis and grabs my head. Okay, so if you've ever been in a situation like this, you know what it's like. You know that it's not easy. She said no, and tried to get away. If you've never been through a situation like this, and you're one of those people that says like, well, I would fight, I would kick and scream. I wouldn't open my mouth. I would bite his dick off, or, people say shit like that.
Yeah.
Well, if I prepared you for an event and I said, so in 1 month's time,
right,
Weinstein is going to try to do this and this and this to you. Mm-hmm. So let's make a plan. Most people don't do that. Most people don't have like a crisis plan in their head. And even if they did, when you go into a situation like that, someone whips out their dick and they grab you, there's a lot of possible roads that moving forward. One is they'll make you do oral sex and then they'll give you a part in a movie.
Right.
Another road is they make you do oral sex and they slit your throat and dump you in a dumpster somewhere.
Right.
Or they proceed to maim you somehow, like cut up your face, or like you just don't know, because if someone's capable of doing that,
you've transgressed all expectations.
Yeah, you've proven yourself to be a psychopath.
I cannot imagine the fact that you went. The story is going, and all of a sudden he pulls out his penis. It was just there that idea that like he could do that. He's like, well, of course, this is the next action.
Yeah, because I suspect that he's what we call a sexual sadist. He gets off by by rape. He gets off by sexually assaulting women. My guess is that it's actually hard for him to enjoy sex with someone who wants to have sex with him.
Wow.
And there are people like that. In the same way that you have sadists who take pleasure in poking out the eyes of a cat because the cat is suffering. You have sexual sadists who take sexual pleasure in sex acts that actually harm other human beings.
Right.
And in the same way that a heterosexual likes to have sex with someone, you know, a hot person of the opposite sex, sexual sadists like to have sex with someone who's struggling and uncomfortable and, and crying and unwilling.
Incredible.
And so not only is he a sexual sadist, but he's also a psychopath, in that he has no empathy and doesn't mind lying and doesn't care, you know, he doesn't have any shame about it. He's not busted up.
He's fearless.
Right. Doesn't have fear is another issue. So anyway, he overpowers her. It makes, you know, and then she says, this is a quote from her, "I just sort of gave up. That's the most horrible part of it. And that's why he's been able to do this for so long to so many women. People give up and then they feel like it's their fault," unquote.
Yeah.
Later, she was offered an audition for a few parts in some movies, but not huge movies, I don't think. She said it felt like Weinstein had a routine, actually, afterwards. She was like, I feel like this wasn't the first time.
Like that was his MO.
Yeah. And she also got the impression that his people were aware of this whole thing. You know, there's no way to know. She developed an eating disorder. She had PTSD. She became suicidal. And to this day, she says she has nightmares about him. Oh. And this is, you know, 10 years later.
That's crazy.
Okay.
But there's definitely all those reports of like all the industry jokes about Harvey Weinstein.
Yeah, we'll get into that. So to wrap up the rape section here, we got Rose McGowan having been raped by Weinstein, and Annabella Sciorra, I think.
Yeah, McGowan's must have been severe because they settled for a lot, and she is still so angry about it. You know?
Annabella was in Jungle Fever, Copland, and The Sopranos, and there's others. There's other people who have come forward saying that he raped. So let's take a break, and when we get back, let's go on to the women who have accused him of sexually assaulting and harassing. What do you say?
Yep.
All right, we're back from the break. If you haven't become a patron, please do so. Go to patreon.com. When you become a patron, you get access to all of our premium episodes. Also know that we're having a live event on January 27, 2018 at Antioch University at 3 o'clock.
That's pre-recorded, right?
What?
It's a pre-recorded live event?
Yeah. And you can go to the Facebook page to find out more information about it. It's free. There's no tickets. And then we're going to go afterwards. I haven't told you about this, but we're going to go afterwards to this new bar nearby that has like pinball and video games. And
stuff. Sick.
Yeah. I don't think I've ever heard you say that word.
Rad.
Wicked.
Tubular.
Wicked. Okay. The other thing I want to say is that the episodes this month are sponsored by Talkspace, which is a legitimate online counseling outfit. So if you're looking for a counselor and you're having trouble and you're interested in online counseling, you can go to Talkspace, use the promo code Kirk. You have to use the promo code Kirk. This is like the third or fourth month they've been a sponsor. And if we only need a few people to sign up every month, and it doesn't have to be you, maybe it's a friend that you refer, but just make sure they use the promo code Kirk and you get a discount.
Or impersonate a friend.
Or impersonate a friend and sign up. And you with Talkspace, it's a lot cheaper, and you can talk to your therapist every day. And some of you have written in and say that you really enjoy your therapist on Talkspace, and the thing is maybe it'll suck, maybe you don't like that sort of format,
right?
But it's a pretty low cost way of finding out.
Yeah.
And we don't need people to be on Talkspace forever. We just need you to sign up. So if you're just interested in signing up for like, you know, a month or something,
yeah.
As long as we have 3 people signing up every month, I think they'll keep being a sponsor.
Can they do Talkspace while they are naked?
Why?
I'm just wondering.
Yeah.
You can like get therapy while you're nude?
Yeah, a fair amount of it is non-video. So,
right.
Yeah.
Well, what if it's video? Does that cross some lines?
Probably.
Damn it! I should start muting the video then.
So, okay. So not a laughing matter moving forward.
Okay, sorry.
Weinstein sexually harassed and assaulted a lot of women, including Rosanna Arquette from Desperately Seeking Susan, Kate Beckinsale from the Underworld movies, Daryl Hannah from Blade Runner, Splash, and Roxanne, Ashley Judd from the Divergent series and other things.
Incredible.
Leah Seydoux, I don't know how to pronounce her name, Leah Seydoux from Inglourious Basterds and Midnight in Paris, Sean Young from Blade Runner, Dune, and Stripes, Connie Nielsen from Gladiator. She said that during a fancy dinner, you know, a fancy industry dinner, he was sitting with her at the dinner table and Weinstein put his hand on her thigh, even though her boyfriend was with her. And she didn't know what to do. And so she grabbed his hand and forcefully put it back in his lap and then had to hold his hand in his lap for a long time.
And he didn't get the hint.
Imagine that one. You're sitting there at a table
with your boyfriend.
And Weinstein, and you're physically wrestling someo's hand back to their side of the situation. Tommy Ann Roberts, 1984. She's not famous, but this is worth, you know, sort of explaining a little bit. She was 20 years old and she was a waitress. Weinstein came to her restaurant, was one of her customers, and urged her to audition for a movie. And he said, you know, come to my hotel room. So, you know, here we go. And when she arrived, he was nude in the bathtub. This is another one of his MOs. He asked people to come to the, you know, hotel room, and then he just, either he's in a robe or he's nude. He told her to get naked because the role required the character to get nude. She was terrified. She refused and left. And interesting fact, today she's a psychology professor at Colorado College.
Really?
Researching sexual objectification.
Oh.
Yeah. So yeah. Gwyneth Paltrow.
Right.
Talented Mr. Ripley, Royal Tenenbaums, etc. Gwyneth Paltrow was 22 at the time, dating Brad Pitt. Weinstein hired her for the lead in the Jane Austen adaptation Emma. It was going to be like a breakout role for her.
Yeah.
Before shooting began, Weinstein summoned her to his hotel room for a work meeting, and she went. Weinstein placed his hands on her and suggested that they head to the bedroom for massages. She said she was petrified, just terrified by it. Again, if you've been in this situation, you know how this situation is terrorizing.
Yeah.
If you haven't been in a situation, you're like, well, I don't, you know,
why didn't you just walk out or whatever?
Again, it's the implication, like in the It's Always Sunny. It's the implication.
Yeah, yeah.
Because what else? That's how these people get away with a lot of things they do, is because it's so sudden that you don't. It's so out of the blue,
right?
And it's so criminal and so weird.
Well, and it's the kind of thing where, for a second, imagine this is not this weird hotel thing. They're at a boardroom meeting with other people, and they're discussing a movie, and Weinstein goes, so you may need to scuba dive in this movie. And maybe scuba diving is something that's not pleasant or terrifying even for this person. In that moment, that person's going to wonder, should I say I don't like scuba diving? Because this is this very powerful group of people, and they want me to scuba dive for this movie, and this is my big break. And that's not sexual at all. That's just a thing they're asking you to do, and you're going to feel that pressure.
Right. There's a social fear of, I'm going to have to totally reject this person.
Right.
And what are they going to do to me?
And then now picture you're in their room or it's just the two of you, but that same gravitas of I'm asking you to do something, and you're like, oh my God.
It's just it's analogous, but I wouldn't call it the same. I would call it in the direction.
No, I was specifically saying, even when it's something as trivial,
I see,
as something like just a request, right? You're already feeling that pressure. Imagine how much magnified that becomes,
right?
When it's such an intimate situation.
And throw again the cognitive notion of, wait, what else are they capable of?
Right.
So this guy's a rapist. Plus the vibe that these guys give off, you feel it, and it feels dangerous. Right. So Gwyneth Paltrow, she refuses, and she leaves. And she tells her boyfriend, Brad Pitt. Later at a theater premiere, Brad Pitt confronts Weinstein and says, never touch Gwyneth Paltrow again. Good boy, Brad Pitt. After that, Weinstein called Gwyneth Paltrow and berated her. And she said that Weinstein screamed at her on the phone.
Wow.
Do you know any other famous women who have been harassed that I haven't mentioned?
Actually, so I don't know if it's because of Weinstein, because she hasn't said yet, but Kill Bill, what's her name?
Who?
You know, the Kill Bill actress. She's in many Pulp Fiction.
Yeah. Okay,
yes,
her. Okay.
God.
I don't know.
Anyway, she was interviewed the other day, and she seemed very emotional about the fact,
Uma Thurman,
that she's not ready to talk about what she needs to talk about, but that when she feels the right moment, she will. Now, I don't know if that's Weinstein, but it's very likely.
Who else do you think? Who else have you heard?
Okay, and then there was another big name recently.
Okay, so we got Angelina Jolie.
That's the one.
Hackers, Girl Interrupted, Changeling. I did a whole episode on the movie Changeling. She said that in the late 90s, she rejected Weinstein's unwanted advances in a hotel room. Heather Graham from Twin Peaks, Boogie Nights, and Swingers. Weinstein invited her to his hotel room, and she refused. It's a longer story than that.
By the way, these, like Angelina Jolie with a famous father and someone who was powerful in Hollywood, at least back in the older days. Yeah, doesn't matter.
Right,
doesn't matter.
Yeah. Lena Headey, Cersei from Game of Thrones.
Oh, right.
He asked her to meet him for breakfast. They ate breakfast together. They talked about films, and he's like, "Hey, let's go out to my hotel room. I have a script I want you to look at." And this is her quote. "We walked to the lift, and the energy shifted. My whole body went into high alert. The lift was going up, and I said to Harvey, 'I'm not interested in anything other than work.' He was silent after I spoke. He was furious." Then she says, after a bit of, they actually tried to get an hotel room. It didn't work. And then he brings her down and sort of has hands like on her back, like, trying to get her out of the hotel. "He paid for my car and whispered in my ear, 'Don't tell anyone about this. Not your manager, not your agent.' I got into my car and I cried."
Wow.
So Mira Sorvino, Mighty Aphrodite, Romeo and Michelle's high school reunion. I think her story was in the New Yorker was one of the main stories that sort of tipped the scales on this whole thing. But she said that he had an MO as she's starting to hear all these other stories. She, asked to meet a young actress in a hotel room, offer a massage, and then force them to have sex. Now, one of his former assistants has come forward and talked to the media. And he talked about how he basically knew that Weinstein was harassing many young women who wanted to be movie stars. He said some of them seemed to be consenting. Some of the women seemed to be consenting, so to speak, while others were seemingly not consenting. So this is just one of his assistants coming forward saying, like, yeah, we basically knew something was up.
Plus, there's also, imagine that he never actually did any of the forceful stuff, right? Imagine that all that had happened, quote unquote, was that a set of women over the years, he basically, propositioned them.
If you have sex with me, I'll give you the role.
And they went ahead with it. And so they, quote, seemed consenting, right?
Yeah.
I was making air quotes there. But But the thing is, that's a power dynamic. That's a power imbalance. That's like a work situation.
Well, that's the definition of workplace
sexual harassment.
Yeah.
Now, so in that case, that was already problematic.
Yeah.
And then, so how many of those happened that we will not get reports of?
Right.
But they were still like, he was abusing his power and basically using that.
So who stepped forward at the Oscars and made a joke about...
wasn't it Seth
MacFarlane? Yeah.
Seth MacFarlane.
Oscars 2013, during the Best Actress Award, he said, "Congratulations, you 5 ladies no longer have to pretend to be attracted to Harvey Weinstein."
That's right, yes.
I just have to say how prescient that, you know, like it. The other thing about this is like how many men in power knew about this, and either did nothing or made a little joke at the Oscars.
I saw an interview with George Clooney and Matt Damon, and they've gotten a lot of flack for like, well, you guys knew, you didn't do anything, and that's a fair criticism. However, I did see this interview with them, and the way Matt Damon was talking, and Matt Damon, maybe we're all wrong, but I've always got the sense that he seems like a genuine type of person. Yeah. Like, I feel like I can believe what he says. And he was saying like, yeah, look, when growing up, I was very young, and he was a legend, and he was like all powerful, and he was known as a hothead, and he was known as having a temper, and he was known sort of like there was this thing about him, like, yeah, he's going to hit on the ladies. But I never knew that this was happening to that extent. Was that true or not? I don't know. All these examples seem fairly private, like meaning it wasn't out in the open. It was like in a room, in a late at night, or in a locked office, or in a locked hotel room. Well,
yeah, I'm not gonna pass judgment really, because I wasn't in their shoes, and I don't know if I've ever been. But yeah, they were private, but everyone you talk to were like, yeah, there were rumors. Right. Everyone knew.
So what do you do when there's rumors?
Well, good question. What do you do? I don't know, man. Like,
I mean, how many, maybe
encourage people to get together and go to the police, talk to a lawyer about, suing him or something.
Like,
I don't know.
Look at the thing that Rose McGowan tweeted, that because Ben Affleck came out and said, oh, this is such a sad situation.
No, I'm not saying the victims. I'm saying like these other men in power.
Right. What I'm saying is Rose McGowan tweeted, oh, well, Ben Affleck, how come then all you did was tell me you were going to do something about it? Or like what Ben Affleck had told her is, I've told him to cut it out so many times.
Well, let me just ask you this. Let's say Weinstein punched 50 people, and there were rumors that like, well, you get into a room and he might pull out a knife and try to stab you.
That's Harvey, man.
Are you going to be like, Harvey. Well, those are rumors?
No, I mean, that's Harvey. I wouldn't.
You're gonna call the police. You're gonna be like, there's a man
on what?
Someone's gonna be like, someone call the police, or someone's gonna talk to the media and be like, I don't know why, but I've been hearing a lot of things that Weinstein likes to pull a knife and threaten people with it, and that's not right.
I think to use your own perspective about how it's easy to say, if I had been on that couch with him, I would have done this or that or the other thing.
That's a different scenario, because, and I get it. And again, I started this whole thing saying I'm not going to pass judgment, but my point is that if it involved violence,
and it did involve, I mean, a kind of violence.
Well, it involved violence and sex.
Yeah.
Sexual violence.
Yeah.
If it was just violence, or if it involved some other kind of thing, like he like extorted money out of the actresses or actors or something. I'm just going to assume that the people who heard the rumors would have spoken out more about it, or done something more.
I don't know. I mean, like, there's these stories of directors that actually get physically aggressive and violent.
And you hear them in the media.
Only recently, right?
No, you hear those things pretty quickly.
Only in the last few years. Like when I mean, is it a coincidence?
So your contention is that if Weinstein had been since the 70s, using a knife and threatening people with it and occasionally actually cutting people. Your contention is, and rumors went around about how he does this since the 70s. Your contention is that people would have been just as silent about it.
I mean, you're painting an extreme. And so probably if he was cutting people and they were bleeding and they were going to the hospital at some point.
He was raping people.
I know, but
which is worse than cutting them.
But let me flip the situation. It didn't come out till now.
Right.
So yeah, actually maybe it would have been similar.
No, it would not have been similar.
I don't know.
I know, because it's obvious.
But then how do you explain that it didn't come out? Because
it has to do with sex. And it has to do with our paternalistic notions about women and like, well, you know, women, you know.
Maybe, but Kevin Spacey and men, you know, it's like it didn't come out till now. Right,
because it has to do with sex. That's the overarching thing. If Kevin Spacey had been occasionally punching people in the face, because this goes back, we're not talking like recently. Okay, we're talking decades.
So the punches, maybe, but verbal abuse, everyone, that's the thing that was not an open secret. That was open.
Right.
He was verbally abusive to everyone for years.
Okay, so case and frickin' point, dude.
But
so
why wasn't that an issue?
Because that's not criminal to like be a dick of a boss to your employees, you know? That's not a criminal act. He was criminally raping his coworkers. He was criminally sexually assaulting these people. And so his verbal abuse was widely known and talked about, and the men would share it.
But no one did anything about it.
Well, because that's not a crime.
Okay, so you're drawing the line. You're saying that if it had been a crime, just not sexual, and maybe not to women, he wouldn't have been able to get away with it. Yeah. I'm saying that there's been people in power for a long time in our history that do get away with violent acts, and they do get away with it. And maybe not to that extent, and maybe not, you know, but I'm just not sure that...
Give me one person who is a person of power who physically assaulted on the level of rape 15 people and then did, you know, other kinds of physical assaults, smaller physical assaults, punching, stabbings, another 77 people, and got away with it for 30 years. Give me one example.
Part of the reason... Of course, I don't know. Because probably
it doesn't
we wouldn't
exist.
have heard about it, right?
Well, it does. Of course, we would have heard about it, because when someone does something the first time or close to the first time, people report it.
Well, but let me just ask you, the percentage of that happening in the real world is so low to begin with. People don't actually go around punching people.
Well, why is that? You have just as many sadists who want to do that in position of power.
Right, but for one thing, like if it's guy to guy, there's a higher risk, right? They could get punched back, right? If it's a knife, that's a life-threatening situation, they could get attacked and maimed. And also, there's much more visible scar from punching someone or stabbing someone than raping someone.
You're really trying to make... I don't... What's your point? Like,
well, my point is that... All I'm saying is that the people that knew about these rumors...
You're trying to defend Matt Damon, essentially.
Not just Matt Damon. I'm saying the people that knew about these rumors, it's easy now for us to say,
yeah,
why didn't someone do something?
I'm not blaming... My larger point to this whole thing, after doing a deep dive on this whole thing and giving it some thought, is not to blame Matt Damon or... and particularly the victims for reporting. It's a common, well-known phenomenon that after being assaulted, there's a strong urge to just sweep it under the rug.
Yeah,
like for whatever reason.
You know, because like, why did Rose McGowan take the money instead of coming out and saving future?
Right. So
you can't do it. Right?
I'm not. No, yeah. that is a well-known psychological phenomenon that is completely justified. What I'm saying is, there's a massive difference between physical violence and sexual violence. There's a massive difference between those two things, and the question is why? Now, you're trying to make the argument that they're the same, which I have to say is ridiculous.
No, what I'm trying to say is these guys, and they could be liars, but they say, I didn't know he had raped people.
Fine, but the fact is that the silence was everywhere. The effort to like, well, you come to a wine.
The better analogy wasn't, he's been punching and stabbing people. No, it's that he's verbally abusive. It turns out,
no.
Here's he was stabbing and punching.
Here's a better analogy in terms of an individual. You were stabbed.
Sure.
Would you go to the police?
If I wasn't afraid for my life, sure.
Yeah, you'd be like, you'd get away and then you'd go to the police, right? Or you are Brad Pitt and you hear about Gwyneth Paltrow comes and says, he tried to strangle me. As Brad Pitt, would you go to the police? Would you be more likely to go to the police? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So that's my point, is that because our society is so busted up and puritanical and stupid when it comes to attitudes about sex, we as a society, and there's systems in place that kind of keep it this way, shame sex to such an extent that even when you have the equivalent of having someone try to strangle you, or you have the equivalent of having someone actually stab you, or you have the equivalent of someone slapping you across the face with their hand, 10 times. When you have the equivalent of an assault like that, you internally say, it's better I don't tell anyone, because if I tell people, there are consequences that I'm going to incur as a sexual assault victim, that I'd rather have the consequence of not saying anything than the consequence of saying something. And when someone stabs you, there's none of that. There's no consequence to coming for, other than what you're saying in terms of like worrying about him actually coming after you and killing you or something. But the same fear is there with the rape, right? He could come after you and kill you. So that's the same thing is there. But my point is that why is there a difference? And the only thing I can think of, and I've been thinking about this, for years now, so it's not like a new thing I've been thinking, is our society is just so stupid that we teach our kids certain notions. We give certain notions, particularly around women and sex, particularly around being a victim of a sexual assault. And we need to change that. We need to start, the whole hashtag Me Too thing is like a very small step in the right direction in terms of like saying, look, it's almost a normal thing to be a victim of sexual assault in our society. You're not alone. You're not abnormal, and there's nothing wrong with you. It's almost universal that sexual assault victims will blame themselves. If he tried to strangle you, the chance that person would walk away and blame themselves for almost being strangled or even being strangled by Harvey Weinstein is very slim. Anecdotally and empirically. So why do we, and particularly women, have an internalized shame about being a victim of a sexual assault? It's our society's fault. That's my point.
And that's fair. I do think that there are two different levels of this. One level is, and actually Matt Damon was mentioning this in his interview, they viewed him, and he's ashamed of this, but they viewed him as old school, like, grabbing the secretary's ass sort of thing. And they're like, yeah, that's Harvey.
Which I just want to label as a paternalistic notion that keeps the status quo.
Right. And so that's how they viewed Harvey, according to them. They're like, yeah. Meaning, I think they would agree that there was a problem because it stemmed from like the old ways, quote unquote, where it was, he's always flirting with the girls. He's grabbing their ass and stuff. What they didn't know is he was literally raping people, Yeah. And so now the first one is not okay, but there is a big leap between, I knew he had raped people. I just didn't want to say anything. That is a huge difference. It's like with the Bill Cosby stuff. I don't know if there were rumors or not. I certainly never heard any. But if there were rumors that like, he likes to get grabby with the women, is very different from he drugs and rapes women.
Right. So again, same exact situation. Imagine Bill Cosby drugged men and women, and then proceeded to steal their money. Let's just lower it way down to just drug you and steal your money.
Sure.
And then you wake up and you're like, he just took the $5 out of my wallet, and then I left the hotel. What's the chance that the person is or is not going to report that to the authorities?
That's probably true. I also do know.
You know it's true.
Well, hold on. I know first-person stories from people that were physically bullied, and they had a lot of shame around that and did not like to admit it and did not like to talk about it.
Sure.
So that can happen too.
And that's also shameful and also potentially carries with it issues.
Yeah, and that was punching. That was actually punching, shoving, stealing lunch money, all that kind of stuff.
But, you know, just Bill Cosby did it to dozens of women who, and only a number of them felt as though society and the legal system and their families and the media would treat them well if they came forward. Very few of them. If there were dozens of men and women who had been drugged and their wallets stolen by Bill Cosby, I'm guessing that there would be a 10 to 20-fold increase in the amount of people who would have come forward. Why is that? Well, because our institutions are fucked, our society is screwed, our messages that we give people is screwed, our preparedness for stuff like this is bad, our systems of reporting stuff like this are bad, our units or the getting the word out about how to, you know, think about this is bad. It's a very upsetting thing, as you can hear from me.
I totally agree with you. I just add to that and I say, man, there's all those cases of 100 years of a school institution that constantly beat their students. And it was just the way things were done. And so kids were regularly abused generation after generation. And no one said shit. Well, and all of a sudden, in modern times, they get shut down finally, because now we're in a time and place where it's starting to be like, wait a minute, that's not right.
Well, right, exactly. It's a little different, though, because when I was a kid in the 70s going to school as a fourth grader, the teachers would paddle the kids.
Yeah.
And there was nothing wrong with that. The parents wanted.
But why didn't the parents say something?
Because the parents wanted the teachers to paddle.
Why? You know, it's like
because it's a different parenting style, essentially.
But you can blame. So you can, in retrospect, say they should have known better.
No, there are cultures right now in the world where it's the same. So and neither one is right.
I think that, but to push back on that, what if people said, well, it's not necessarily wrong that in the 50s they had a different culture and women were just not as empowered. That's just a different culture.
It's analogous in that kids can be oppressed and their voices can be taken away and abused as a result. But it's a little different because empirically speaking, in the 50s, the raping of women, I don't think anyone thought that was okay. It's just it's just that our overall society, the things that we teach about men and women and sex, is such that it makes it extremely. There's so many consequences for a victim to step forward. Is the thing.
Yeah, I think on the victims, I can't agree more with you on. I was mostly trying to. Part of me wants to say, God damn it, why didn't someone say stuff sooner? Right?
Right. No, I'm not going to blame. I'm not going to blame any individual.
Right.
I'm blaming society for creating a situation where not only the victims but also the peri-victims were. There's just too many consequences to do anything.
Yeah. Like, why didn't Brad Pitt then come out publicly with it?
Right. Because well, let's speculate. You know, why didn't he come forward? He seemed obviously upset. He went right to him, and
I can imagine a few things. Part of it is I can deal with this myself. You know, I'm gonna tell him he can't do that. Number two, I don't want to like blow this out of proportion. To your point, it was just him coming on, and it was inappropriate. But I don't want to blow it. And number three, it's probably a bit of I don't want to fuck up both of our careers. You know,
right? And let's speculate further and say that he doesn't want to be seen as a cuckold. You know, what's my girlfriend doing in Weinstein's hotel room? You know, and I, as a boyfriend, am going to get judged for that because our society is, you know, blah, blah. Anyway, let's take a break. When we get back, let's get into some other things and also other people who have done stuff like that. What do you say, Berto?
Let's do it.
All right, we're back from the break. Again, this episode and the episodes of this month of November 2017 are brought to you by Talkspace, online therapy. Go there, use the promo code Kirk, or tell a friend to use promo code Kirk with Talkspace. We just need a few people to sign up this month in November, and they'll become an ongoing sponsor for December.
Very nice.
All right, so...
oh, by the way, if we all end up getting in a spaceship, you know, and we're like orbiting somewhere, and we are subscribed to Talkspace, are we doing space Talkspace?
That's pretty good. Actually, it occurs to me, like, what do people on the space station do when they need therapy?
That's true.
You know, Talkspace.
Talkspace.
All right. Weinstein initially tried to do damage control when this came out, when the media started really looking at it. What did he say?
Yeah, he came out and he said that he apologized, and that he was wasn't it like he apologized, but it was one of those I have a problem, but you know what, I'm gonna dedicate myself to helping get us rid of Trump and helping the liberals and stuff like that.
I don't know if he said that.
Yeah, like he ended with, but don't worry, I'm gonna go fight the good fight against the environment, you know, global warming and all these other things. So it was like, I'm sorry, I do have a problem. I'm going to really think about this and introspect. But you know what? I'm going to get in there and fight for good causes.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of one of the weird things about this is that he's been putting a lot of money into the Democrat political party.
Yeah.
And talks a lot about the liberal agenda, so to speak. So anyway, here's some quote. I appreciate the way I've behaved with colleagues in the past has caused a lot of pain, and I sincerely apologize for it. In the past, I used to compliment people, and some took it as me being sexual. I won't do that again. So,
oh, it's their fault. Hey, man, if me complimenting you is a problem, I just won't compliment you at all.
Yeah, yeah, compliment you. That's interesting.
Did he mean compliment you?
Yeah. He also said he would go to a facility for treatment. This is this is a common famous person ploy of just like, you know what, I've given a lot of thought. Yeah, I need to go to treatment.
Yeah.
His lawyer said, any allegations of non-consensual sex are unequivocally denied by Mr. Weinstein. Mr. Weinstein believes that all these relationships were consensual. Okay, so what's the reaction from, or what sort of consequences he had so far?
Well, he got ousted from the film society, whatever it's called.
Yeah.
The guild, right?
Yeah.
He got publicly denounced repeatedly in very visible and I would call them embarrassing ways.
Yeah.
I think he got ousted from Miramax.
Yeah. Well, the Weinstein Company.
Right. There was some rumor or some news report that he had been sort of erratic, showing up at his sister's, maybe on suicide watch, something like that. So I doubt that there's no way on earth he hasn't had psychological ramifications from all this.
Well, worry.
He must be stressed out of his mind.
Yeah. Good. And there's also criminal and civil rights investigations. The police in, I think, England and also in the States, New York and I think LA have opened investigations because of all the allegations. All right, predictions. What predictions do we have about Mr. Weinstein here, moving on to the future?
Oh man, I don't want people killing themselves. Well, some I do, but not everyone. You know. I hope that he does get treatment, and that he doesn't do this to anyone else. But I don't wish his extended family or ultimately him in the long term any real, you know, like death, let's say.
But I'm not asking for your wishes. I'm asking for your predictions. What do you think is going to happen?
I think he's going to try his best to disappear from the limelight, and he might get addicted to some substances.
Okay.
He might die younger, much younger than he would have.
I think he's going to be in and out of court for a long time. And I think he's going to do I predict he'll do a short stint in prison, but not for long because of the statute of limitations, which I don't understand why that applies.
Right. Like rape should never go out of fashion.
Right. I'm guessing that some of his assistants will actually come forward and testify against him to protect themselves as being implicated as an accessory to these actions. I think the Weinstein Company will fold. I think it'll just completely become non-existent.
Oh,
I mean, who wants the Weinstein Company? To have a label on the front of their movie. I'm guessing that other men will start to be charged in addition to Weinstein.
Related to Weinstein?
No, like Kevin Spacey.
Oh yeah. Certainly more. Oh, by the way, that goes back to my original point that it does make me feel. I will be happy to. No, I'll be sad to take these words back if what I'm about to say doesn't happen. But I'm sort of happy to see that it is not actually a downpour of hundreds of men all across the board.
It's starting to look that way, but yeah.
It's not, right?
Yeah, no, there's plenty.
And even some of them that are like, what? Dustin Hoffman. But the Dustin Hoffman stuff, as bad as it is, pales in comparison. He's not a 70-year rapist.
Yeah.
Right? And so I'm just temporarily relieved that it is in fact a few monsters, not a whole cabal. Hundreds of men.
The amount of sexual sadists that exist in the world are extremely. They're very rare individuals. Harvey Weinstein's psychology is a very rare individual. I mean, the thing that I always try to tell, particularly women, is that the average guy, like, in the 99% of men, somewhere around there, couldn't even get an erection in the face of a sexual partner, if you will, who is crying or upset or unwilling. There's a biological urge or requirement for men and women to have a partner who at the very least is indifferent. Do you know?
Well, actually, no, it's a great point. Like, for example, in the TMI department, like, I have a serious problem feeling aroused if I don't feel that the other person is actually into me.
Yeah.
And that they want to do this. And so it would be like, yeah, you're right. I'd have to have some substance injected into me.
Yeah, I talk with couples about this all the time. They'll be like, so, we were having sex, and then I got the vibe that she just wasn't into it. And even though she was going through the motions and trying to act like, and I just couldn't go on, and it was really upsetting to me.
Right.
It's upsetting.
Yes.
To the man.
It's deflating.
Yeah.
It's saddening.
It's like it's very there's something very disturbing about that to a normal person.
And that's just a subtle reaction.
Right.
Let alone, stop. It's ridiculous. It's incredible.
Now, of course, this is on the internet and on YouTube, so someone listening is going to be like, hey, what about rape fantasies and stuff? Yeah. There are men and women who have fantasies about doing rape and receiving rape, shall we say. And those are fantasies. They're not
right.
People have a lot of play, shall we say, in their life and in their sex. People will like to play that they're a child, but they don't want to actually be a child. Yeah. They'll play that they are of a different gender, but they're not transgender. Yeah. They want to play that that you don't know your spouse, like you just met, but you don't want to actually not know your spouse. It's play and sex. It's very different than actual rape and actual, so
it's like, I don't actually want to be pulled over by a female cop and have some stuff happen. I don't want that to happen.
Right. So Why were we talking about that?
We were talking about the difference between. Yeah, you're right. How did we get into this?
Because you were saying not all men, and you were saying it was heartening that not more men were being outed as Weinstein, Bill Cosby level.
Even the Kevin Spacey stuff coming out.
Yeah.
Of course, it's now ruined his career. And were we going to talk about him?
Yeah, we'll talk about him.
I mean, without preempting that, I'm just saying the level of grievance is, he grabbed crotches, he grabbed legs, and he influenced, he like exerted his power in that way.
Yeah.
Versus literal like breaking into a hotel room and raping. You know?
But the stuff that I've heard about Spacey is on the level that could psychologically traumatize somebody,
Sure.
And needs to be. And you're not saying that it's not that.
No, of course, yeah.
But
I guess that I don't even want to make that point. I'll take that one back. What I'm trying to find some positive, and the only positive I see is at least it's not all. Like, imagine a list of the top 200 actors that we love, and all of them are being accused. It's like that would be terrible.
I caution you and others regarding that urge to see it that way, because not that there's some good to that, I think, which you're exhibiting, which is like, look, I just don't want my entire life to come crashing down around me, because, say everyone in the Star Wars actor universe comes out is terrible. You could never watch Star Wars movies again. You know what I mean?
Well, this is like, I sadly have had arguments with people that feel that like Islamic extremism is super, super, super common, and that there's like a billion or at least millions.
And it's heartening to know the facts, which is that a very, very few Muslims and very few Christians.
And it's also like if your hypothesis was true, we should expect to see daily hundreds, if not thousands, of
and that so that vein is fine. But I caution you as a man, man to man, against having that perspective of, well, at least it's not every man. You know what I mean? And there's some good to that, but there's also that's part of the institution of paternalism and of status quo, of just like not acknowledging the severity and you're not doing that, but also not being open, or sort of having an emotional attachment to, this can't be bigger than it is, and I don't want it to be bigger than it is.
Well, I mean, an example is Sean Astin, from The Goonies and from Stranger Things, right? He just recently came out and said,
Bob.
Yeah, he just recently came out and said, look, I was not myself abused, but I don't doubt Corey Feldman's stories. Yeah. I could sadly imagine that was probably true. I myself wasn't. I never saw it. And I've heard similar things from Elijah Wood, and there's others, right? Which the thing, because the rumor, remember, there's these rumors like the entire Hollywood is one big pedophile cabal, and they're got ties with Hillary Clinton and all these things, all the way up to Soros, and the world is run by a pedophilic cabal. It's nice to hear. Maybe that's not quite right.
Right. Some sort of massive conspiracy, I don't think is likely.
Because there are people on the right that
but the point is we need to be, as men who are allies of women who have been through stuff like this, we have to be open and say, like, I really hope there's not more of this happening, but I'm receptive and open to learning the truth.
Right. And
you're not going to ruin my day by telling me about even more stories. You know, I think that needs to be said. You know, it's just like, and if there is more of this, I want to know about it, and I'm gonna do my part to try to illuminate that problem. And I don't have an attachment to not being more problems.
Maybe one thing I'm reacting against is initially when his stories came out, before all these other stories came out, and the Me Too stuff happened, I heard this narrative online that was, I'm paraphrasing, but it was kind of sort of like, well, that's what happens when men get power.
Right.
And that's what I'm saying is not true.
Right.
Men getting power does not equal we rape women.
No.
But men, even in power or no power, traditionally unfortunately, have mistreated women, traditionally.
Yeah.
And then, like, to your point, there's these aberrations which are on top of everything else, sadistic and psychopaths and stuff. And then they add power to the mix. And that's like the worst case scenario.
Right. It's multifactorial. One is you have psychopaths and sadists that might even look for a position of power so they can do this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But maybe not. Maybe it's just like coincidental that some people in power just also have to be sexual sadists. But you also have, as you say, a societal notion that it's okay to do that to women.
Right.
I grew up in a time when, and I'm guessing you did too, Berto, can think of even in Colombia, where it was just like, you know, a man could slap the butt of a waitress and the waitress would just go like, oh, you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, I mean,
like what George Bush is doing right now. Have you heard of what he's doing?
Yeah, although is he just senile, like, losing it?
I think he's losing it.
Okay.
So, but you know, worth talking about.
Sure. Yeah.
You know. Anyway,
I think I saw that directly in the Senate in Colombia, because I had a relative who was in the Senate, so I would be there somewhat frequently as a kid, and of course I didn't see, like, quote unquote, the butt slap. I do a lot of quotes, I just noticed. But what I did see was a power imbalance, because by and large, men were senators and women were secretaries.
Right.
And there was always sort of a deference and a reverence of the men in power and stuff like that.
And
so,
a notion that women's bodies are available to men at any time.
As a kid, I didn't see that part, but I'm sure it was there. And it would be easy for it to have been there because of that power imbalance.
Right. So the problem has a lot of problems. Anyway, I want to point out that I'm old enough to remember when Anita Hill came forward about being sexually...
Clarence Thomas.
Yeah, in the 90s, who put a pubic hair in my Coke, that whole thing.
But Clarence is no longer he's no longer a justice, is he? Wait.
I don't know.
He is.
Yeah, right. He is. Anita is a documentary in 2013 that I highly recommend. That's
about that?
Yeah. It is like, because, you know, growing up in the 90s as a 20-something, I didn't have cable and didn't care to watch the whole Anita Hill thing. I just sort of would pick up on random reports. And so my understanding of it was extremely limited.
Me too.
This documentary called Anita it's really interesting. Like, watching it, I was like, oh, I get the whole story now.
Wow.
Like, it's really an interesting story. And Anita Hill, if this documentary is to be believed as a hero among humans, she's an amazing person. And the fact that Clarence Thomas
is still
essentially got away with it is interesting. Okay, so let's talk about men. What man recently came forward saying that he was sexually harassed?
The Rent actor.
Rent?
Yeah, he was the original Rent.
Who else
in the Rent cast?
I'm looking for a particular person. Even perhaps he's almost a household name at this point.
Oh, that was sexually harassed?
Yeah.
Oh, well, Corey Feldman.
Well, yeah, him, but someone else.
Someone else did?
Yeah. Terry Crews. Have you heard about him?
Oh, yeah, he did say that, right? Okay, yeah, I forgot, but you're right.
Right, so for people who don't know Terry Crews, he's famous from the Old Spice commercials.
Yeah.
He was the big, angry black guy who would scream, and he had all these big muscles. And
he still does. He's huge.
Yeah. He actually was a NFL linebacker, defensive end for the Rams, Chargers, and Redskins. He's in the Expendable series. He's Brooklyn Nine-Nine. He's known for being a large, muscly, aggressive, angry person.
A massive dude.
Well, he recently, as all this stuff was coming out, he's about being Weinstein and everything.
Yep.
he started tweeting about how all this was like bringing up memories for him. And over a bunch of tweets, he reported that he was attending a party with his wife recently, and quote unquote high-level Hollywood executive approached him and his wife, and the high-level Hollywood executive groped Terry Lewis. Terry Crews. Sorry, Terry Lewis? Who's Terry Lewis? Terry Crews. The producer, this guy called him the next day to apologize, but never offered Terry Crews an explanation. Crews said that he considered punching the guy, right? He was like, well, I thought about just, punching the guy, but I didn't because I was worried that the media would not see that very well, Large muscle man Terry Crews stomps out white guy.
Another angry black man.
Right, exactly. And he didn't want to lose work.
Right.
Because, and he started talking about that he totally understands why women stay silent after situations like that.
To your point earlier.
Right. Who's going to believe you? What are the repercussions? And you need to work again. Again, if Terry Crews was punched in the face or threatened with his life, like there's just a different vibe to reporting that. You know what I mean? So after all this, the police actually looked into it, which is interesting because essentially Terry Crews on Twitter was reporting a crime had occurred. And so it's interesting that the police would see that and go like, well, let's investigate.
Right.
Like we now have been alerted.
Probable cause.
Yeah. We now it's like the police are driving down the street and they see a robber running out of a house. If you just incidentally see something, then you investigate. And so they came across it on Twitter and they're like, okay, let's investigate. So they started to investigate it, and I'm guessing that they interviewed Terry Crews, and actually Terry Crews actually told them who actually this was, and the police are actually investigating Adam Vennett. He's a famous talent agent in one of the biggest talent agencies. Like Adam Vennett represents Sylvester Stallone, Diane Keaton, Eddie Murphy, Adam Sandler, and Dustin Hoffman.
What? And
many other actors, right? So this guy can make or break your career, right? Huh. Maybe even more so than a producer can. Right?
Sure.
It's like if you become a client of Adam Vennett among Sandler, Dustin Hoffman, Sylvester Stallone, like you're just like,
the
man.
Connections are made.
Right. And so, and this guy just walks around parties proceeding to sexually harass people. And so Adam Vennett might get fried for this, which just makes me quite happy about the whole thing.
But the legality there must be low, right? Like grabbing a crotch must not be.
I don't know, honestly. Like when it comes to the law, sexual assault is there's a pretty wide variety of things that constitute sexual assault. Like if he says he groped him. It's hard to know what he probably grabbed his penis.
That's what I imagine.
If you just grab someone's genitals, I mean, imagine what it says in the law about grabbing someone's genitals without their permission. Like that probably doesn't go over well according to the letter of the law. You know what I mean?
I guess I'm pessimistic considering that, these multiple rapists, I've raped multiple women.
No, man,
they're out in 10 years.
Because it never gets prosecuted. Think about, well, that's not your point, but, but 10 years is a long time. I mean, 10 years.
Well, I guess if what you're saying is that my impression is wrong and actually it is serious, that's fine. I just have this impression like, man, rape is barely, but I'm probably wrong.
Well, in terms of sentencing, yeah, we could get into a debate.
Like, we were just talking about the statute of limitations,
Yeah, but really, if any prison time is
prison time,
is happiness for me.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, what if the dude goes to jail for 3 months because he grabbed someone's dick?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. Like
that's
I don't know how much prison time is. Yeah. It would make me feel good, but
the flip side of this is, I have a feeling that as a society we are not ready yet, and because like, okay, so I had my butt and my crotch grabbed in multiple occasions as an adult.
Yeah.
And personally, in my case, I didn't mind it. But now with more information, I'm thinking, yeah, I should probably have drawn a line. But that's not how I thought about it.
Well, the point is that the risk is there, and if we we allow, so of all the dick grabbing that's happening in the world or in our society, there's a certain percentage that is harming someone, and there's a certain percentage that is not, right?
Yeah, but this is where it gets tricky, because how, you know, human dynamics are not black and white. You're in a club, you're sort of flirting, you grab someone's stuff, and then they prosecute you and you're in jail for those 3 months I was talking about.
Right. So if as a society we have people out there who either unknowingly are victimizing people, or two, are trying to actually invade someone's space and getting away with it because no one's reporting it, then I would rather live in a society where they say, look, even if you dick grab someone and it's not harmful, we're still going to prosecute you. I'm okay with that world.
Man, you're entering, you know what it sounds like to me? It sounds a little along the lines of the sodomy laws. Like, you know.
No, it's all about consent, my friend.
But that's what I'm saying. Consent when it's.
I'm not saying someone can't grab your dick. I'm saying non-consensual, like randos grabbing your dick.
Yeah, right. But it's like you're in spring break and some girl's flirting with you, so she grabs your ass.
Not okay. I don't think that's the sort of
and let's say I agree
I'm
with
okay
you.
with you not having your ass grabbed.
Okay.
Because people are afraid of a criminal.
So I think we need
so that we eliminate all the other bullshit.
If we agreed, I think we need a ramp down period of time where people are made very well aware of this and educated as such.
Absolutely.
And then start prosecuting.
Well, I don't know what sort of ramp down, but we need education.
Because I guarantee, you know this, in random clubs all over the world, there is ass grabbing happening and more, and not all of it.
And how many women are walking away with PTSD after that?
Fine, but I'm saying when it happens to the men, they're getting mixed signals too, right? And so like, I'm just saying, like,
they're not getting mixed signals about grabbing someone's genitals.
Man, there's a movie out right now.
There's a way of communicating. There's a way of communicating consent for that. So, say you're dancing with a woman and you don't even know her name, and things are, you know, you're getting some dirty dancing going, okay, and it's both consensual. Everyone's fine. And you just decide to grab her in her genitals. Well, to me, I'm like, she decides.
What if I lick her face?
You know
why I'm asking that, right? Do you remember in Vancouver? I'm sitting there and this girl licks my face.
Yeah, I have it on.
Is that assault?
I have it on videotape.
Should I take her to court? I don't know her. I don't know her name.
Well, according to our current. Well, we were in Canada for one, so it's hard to know what sort of law. But here's my thing, is that if some of those incidents have to be taught to the general public of saying like, look, in all likelihood, if you are going to lick someone in the face spontaneously, it's probably going to be taken fine, if not invited, in that situation. But let's all agree that we're not going to do, though. There's a certain set of things that we're not going to do for fear that the other person might actually be traumatized by that. Let's all just agree that we're not going to do that. And maybe there's a way society-wise that we could add a very quick little thing around consent, you know? And I hate all that kind of college talk around like,
touch your finger?
Can I touch your finger? Yes, you could. Can I touch it now? Yes. Okay. Can I touch your other finger? I'm not, well, what do you mean? Which finger? That one right next. Okay. You know, like
that's where
no,
I'm
that's
afraid.
that's not where I don't think we'll ever get to that, because humans like sex too much to get like things in the way. My point is that for this Adam Bennett to just walk up to Terry Crews and grab his dick at a party, that guy has to be prosecuted. And whatever the law, sentencing wise, whatever, maybe it's no jail time. Maybe it's like sexual assault treatment or something. I don't care.
Yeah.
But something's got to be done, because obviously we as a society and a legal system are not doing enough.
I have not a lot, but I have a few friends that are gay. And one of them used to tell us stories about Miami parties that he would go to. And the kind of interactions that they would engage in, these are adults, were random strangers, fully crossing boundaries with each other.
And that shit's got to stop too, my friend. Like, if it's consensual, and there's some way of communicating that real quick, then absolutely. I want people to be having as much consensual random sex as they want to have. I want people to be grabbing dicks as long as everything's... I want everyone to be doing everything they want as long as everyone's cool with it. But in the gay community, which I hate that phrase, among gay people and among lesbians too, there are acts of sexual violence that are happening and people are being traumatized by it. So now, among gay people at a party, is there going to be more consent given? Is there going to be more consensual random touching at a party, at a particular party? Maybe, I don't know. But that doesn't mean, well, you know, where's the line? You know, I just think like we need to scale it back a little bit, and we need to add in a little bit more opportunity for people who don't want to be touched to not be touched. When someone goes out into the public and goes to a party and goes to a dance club, they should expect that no one's going to touch them unless they want someone to touch them. They should have that trust in our society. And there are women who can't say that, and maybe some men can't say that.
I mean, look, in the culture I grew up in, when you go to a dance club, you dance together, like really close.
Sure.
And you put your hand down lower on the waist, and she puts, and there's a lot of close, and you bring it in. And
so just to pause you there.
Yeah.
Every woman in your neighborhood who signed up and went to the party and said, "Yes, Berto, I'll dance with you," knows what sort of touching is going to happen. They're consenting to it.
Yeah.
Yes.
But it's also because the culture is that way.
Yes, exactly. So when Terry Crews goes to this party, he did not say, a guy is probably going to grab my dick at the party today. Like that's not, when a woman goes to a dance club, she's not going, I hope someone grabs my boob. I hope someone grabs my butt.
I just think, look, I mean, I've been at parties where there are drunk people, right? And I've seen drunk, middle-aged women do very lascivious things.
If it's not
boobs, they've certainly grabbed male and female asses. They've kissed people in the lips.
If I know what party you're talking about, everyone knows what they're signing up for when they're going to that party.
See, that's bordering on victim blaming. If someone gets victimized, right?
Well, if someone's
you should have known. No, you should have known.
If someone's victimized, then that's wrong. But I'm saying a lot of the things you're talking about are context, and people know, like the people who are doing, like someone at this party that you're talking about walks up and like grabs your butt.
Yeah.
Well, they know, that people might have their butt grabbed at that party.
How do we know that party that Terry Crews was at was not one of those parties?
We don't.
Exactly.
But look, we can assume that
part of what I'm going against
like
is that there are double standards. For example, imagine I told you that there's a movie coming out with a scene where a professional male is doing a treatment on a female, and as she disrobes, he looks at her vagina and makes a comment about it, like a sexual comment about it. I think most people would say, like, what movie is that? Is that a serious scene? Like, that better not. Well, there's a movie coming out called Bad Mom's Christmas or something, and there's this scene in there where she's giving him like, what do you call when they take the hair out, right?
Yeah.
And his legs are spread, and she looks at his dick and she says, "Whoa, that's like a pint or like a traffic cone or something like that," right?
Yeah.
And then later they're cheering and throwing money. It's like, "Put a baby in me." Okay.
That is a freaking problem.
Double standard.
Yes. And it's a problem.
Like, I don't hear anyone up in arms about that.
Yes, because no one cares about men being victims of sexual shaming or sexual assault.
Right.
That is a massive problem. And in 30 years, they're going to look back at that movie and gasp. People are going to look back at that movie and go like, holy mackerel. Like when I look back at the 70s and I see that the Dukes of Hazzard were driving around in a car that had the Confederate flag on the top, and it was called the General Lee. I am mortified.
And the Dixieland song.
Right.
So when the Me Too thing came out,
at the time, my parents, there's a whole podcast. I can't remember what podcast, but there's like these black guys who were talking about how, because they're our age and they grew up watching, and they said they loved the General Lee, and they had a General Lee car,
right?
And these black kids.
It was I liked that show.
Yeah. So back then,
one of my
parents, that was one of the most popular shows at the time.
And I certainly had no idea of any of the context.
Our parents did, though, is the thing.
Okay.
And they were like, well, you know, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
But we look back on it today and we're like, holy crap. Well, the same is going to be true about all of these jokes that you're talking about.
Sure. So like when the Me Too stuff came out, I got into an argument online because I had read an article.
Save it. Let's take a break. We'll tease that Berto got into another argument. All right, we're back from the break. Again, this month's episodes, November 2017, are brought to you by Talkspace Online Counseling. Promo code Kirk. It's a They make sure that everyone is fully licensed, meaning that they're not recent grads,
right,
and that they're trained. I think they go through like a number of weeks of training on how to be an effective online counselor, because it's a whole other kind of thing. And you can do it from, you can text from work, you can be from home when you're in the bathroom, or as Berto likes, naked. And so promo code Kirk, Talkspace. Okay, so Berto, you wanted to talk about another fight you got into.
Another fight. So I read this article that by someone I know, and it was a well-written article. But the sense I got from it, and maybe it wasn't fully like this, but the sense I got from it was that men, you need to solve this. Like, you need to talk to each other. You need to stop these behaviors.
Yeah.
Men, stop doing this to women, right? So the sense I got is like, men, it's a men versus women thing, and men are the problem. Now, I understand why, right? Like you were saying, most of these cases come out and it's a guy and stuff like that. Now, having been a victim of sexual abuse when I was a kid, and specifically by a woman, who I'm sure was also abused, and probably by a guy, but I'm guessing, right?
But it's funny that you have to say that, you know what I mean? It's like, somehow,
mine is not legitimate,
right?
Yeah.
Which I appreciate, but it's like, I just want to say, in this context, all you got to do is say a woman sexually abused you, and we don't know why.
That's fair. And so I've done inappropriate things in my life, and I feel terrible about them. A lot of them probably stemmed from the fact that I had a bad mental models about sexuality as a result of these things, right?
I'm 100% sure that's where it comes from, Berto.
So I'm not like sitting here and I've been guilty of inappropriate behaviors, and I've felt bad about it and stuff like that. And I've tried to mend those things. But I at the same time wanted it to be more about, look, it is the power imbalance and the sexual abuse and sexual whatever you want, harassment, abuse, assault. Those are the problems. And absolutely, as men, but also as women, we should look around us and see if we can actually help the situation.
Well,
speaking up and feeling free to come out and making people feel safe to come out and all those things. Yeah,
the part of it is that I appreciate is this isn't a problem for women only,
Yeah.
and it's a problem for all of us. The fact that when we actually do studies on this sort of thing, the fact that most of the victims are women doesn't mean that there aren't millions of men and boys. And so when you look at it, it's like, okay, say like 70% of the victims are female, assigned at birth, and 30 are male. Why do we even need to genderize that? Because something like 70% of depressed people are women, but we don't say depression is a female problem. We say depression is something for everybody. The same way being a victim, being a perpetrator it's more men, but there's still plenty, you know, it's probably like 85% or something like that. But there's still, like, again, millions of women on this planet right now who abuse people sexually.
And that's because it's also a different issue when you say, you know, are women being discriminated in the workplace, or are they making less money, or are they, you know, there's issues that we absolutely could segment out.
Right.
But I was specifically taking an issue with the Harvey Weinstein story comes out. Yes, men are the problem, women are the victims, because just shortly after we start hearing these stories of men coming out saying, so I was abused.
Now, sexism is a part of this, and paternalism is a part of this, and the fact that paternalism has led to men being given more power and therefore able to enact these kinds of things. But it's a human thing. And when a author says, men, come on, let's go, I consider that a call for allyship, you know, and a call for, like, yes, we are all in this together. This is, you know, the other thing that I don't know why my brain works this way, because no one else seems to work this way. But when I hear about a story about Mira Sorvino being abused by Harvey Weinstein, I don't identify with fucking Weinstein because he's a man.
No.
I'm not like, oh, I'm a man, so I'm like Weinstein. Like, I identify with Mira Sorvino because I'm not a monster like Weinstein. So I don't understand why gender even has anything to do with it as a motivation of, like, outrage and, like, let's do something.
Yeah, imagine that a news story comes out. A Colombian gangster decapitated 3 people in a drug-related thing.
In the United States.
And then I go, well, I mean, you know, I got to empathize with the Colombian here. Yeah. Like, what?
or I would have to go to you and say, come on, Colombian, stick up for the victims.
Stick up for, yeah, exactly.
It's like, it's like, of course.
Of course I stick up for the victims.
We're all in this together, you know? Anyway, so I have a patron email here, and she actually was the main reason why I wanted to do the deep dive on this episode. I'm going to keep her anonymous. And I also changed the details of this email to mask her identity. She says, I was sexually propositioned by my superior in exchange for a promotion. I have never felt so powerless. I told a colleague I trusted and found out it had been happening to her as well.
Whoa.
So again, her superior comes to her, says, let's have sex. And if you do this, then, you know, I'll give you this promotion, this other position. And she felt powerless. And then so she tells a colleague, and she finds out that it was happening to her too. Jeez. We reported it. They moved him to a different department.
They moved him.
Yeah. And they launched an investigation. They interviewed me and many other coworkers. The person interviewing seemed biased against me. The whole investigation seemed like a cover-up. The man who harassed me was allowed to return a month later. He began to manipulate my coworkers to make me look bad. For example, he told coworkers that I have inappropriate relationships with customers. I didn't feel safe at work, so I left my position. 4 months later, there is still no resolution. So, I learned that sexual harassment investigation, the process of the sexual harassment investigation, is a huge deterrent for anyone to come forward, and it's a huge risk on your career if you speak up.
Yeah.
So why would an organization be like this unless we're stupid about this sort of stuff?
Right. Like by the way, it's not that recently victims came out and finally complained to Miramax Studios.
Right.
It's that they went public with it.
Right.
So this is almost like, in this case, she should have tweeted and blogged about it.
Right. And I think one of the main reasons why we are even talking about it today is because of Donald Trump.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Because that whole thing because when you get partisanship behind something, it gets wings, you know?
Yeah.
And this was like October
That's
of
true.
last year, and that tape comes out with Billy Bush and everything, and then suddenly there's like all this talk in the media about like men in power sexually harassing. There's suddenly like all this talk again.
Yeah, right.
And I think that was the seed that like was like, well, wait a second, there's another dude that's doing perhaps even worse things, and you know, and I think that's what I don't. If Donald Trump wasn't president, I don't, or if that whole thing hadn't come out, I don't know if we'd be talking about it today.
And sadly, so with someone like Trump, even if he weren't president and things did come out publicly, the most that would happen is he wouldn't get another Apprentice show.
If that, well, actually, I don't think so. Yeah, at most, because these things did come out. A lot of these, not that tape.
Yeah, no, I'm saying now in the current environment where now people are starting to pay consequences.
Well, that's interesting because I've given that some thought, because Trump had been accused of a lot of things prior to running for president last year. Yeah. And all of it was swept under the rug for the most part by society.
All of these people, yeah.
But that tape was so... It wasn't like woman reports, no. And you know, it was
him.
It was him talking.
Yeah.
He said that he just walks up to women and grabs them in the genitals.
The big difference, of course, being like that's the easiest. If he wanted to, he'd say like, I was obviously kidding.
But here's the thing: if he wasn't running for president, I suspect he would have been fried, because the right hates this sort of thing just as much as the left does. Like, this knows no partisanship. Everyone hates a guy who does this sort of thing. You know what I mean?
You know, though, like I've seen a lot of cases where these evangelicals, they come out. In many cases, they got prostitutes. In many cases, they abused, and then they plead forgiveness to the Lord, and then they are welcomed back in.
Certainly, there are. I've given this a lot of thought. That you have Woody Allen, you have a lot of definite people who have been apologized for in both liberal camps and conservative camps
in different ways. And
well, case in point, actually, the Seattle mayor, who was found to have had sex with a teenager, with
minors, right? Yeah,
like years ago or something. Yeah. I have liberal friends who were totally defending him.
Really?
Yeah. And I was like, are you kidding me?
But
like,
depending on what grounds?
Because he's gay, one. So there was... Well, so they're like... Yeah, right. That's what I'm saying. Is the partisan apology knows no left or right boundary. It's on both sides. So my point is that if Donald Trump wasn't a Republican nominee, you know, especially for president, my God, I suspect that when that video came out, that there would have been like Weinstein, like a 5% Weinstein reaction that could have actually resulted in Trump losing actual like media power. Because
media power, yes,
and maybe even like the end of his whatever sort of sliver of career he had prior to, you know.
I mean, I think what might have been affected, but I don't know if it would have, because in the end, it wasn't. Like, you would think that no one would now still have a Trump hotel or a Trump plaza.
But that's a whole, but because he was attached to half of the country's dogma and reason for living, then your brain ends up switching everything around, and you make apologies, just like I saw liberals in Seattle making I don't actually know the details of the Seattle mayor, and I just know that my impression was if he was a Republican, the liberals would have no problem frying him on the spit, you know what I mean? But because he was a liberal, they somehow were like, you know, can't we forgive him and stuff? And I'm just like, look, either let's not worry about politicians' sexual activity, which I would actually just prefer. Let's just have them do their jobs. You know, if I have a plumber who had an indiscretion 20 years ago, I don't freaking care. Just do your job.
But what if the indiscretion was a rape? Then you do care.
Well,
right?
I don't care, because a lot of people have a lot of pasts. Let's just put it that way.
Why do we care about Weinstein then?
Well, I care about Weinstein because he's a criminal and he needs to be prosecuted by...
Oh, you're saying if this person served their time.
Yeah, if someone if a plumber,
but this
when
is
a plumber
these
comes to the house,
politicians have not served their time.
so fine.
Yeah,
But with politicians in general, the amount that the average American knows about the actual day-to-day work that we elect them to do is nothing compared to the amount of information we have about their personal lives and the amount of information we know about their random statements that might have nothing to do with their actual decisions that actually impact your life.
right.
And so I would like to go back to a time when we just didn't know that much about politicians' personal lives, and we thought more about how they voted, policies, blah, blah, blah.
I think you run the risk of people saying, I'd like to go back to a time when Hollywood just did great movies and we didn't have to know so much about their personal lives.
No, everyone, sexual harassment and rape needs to stop. And by all means, raise awareness about it.
So even if they're politicians, we should know, right?
If they are currently in the midst of a criminal sort of situation, for sure.
But Harvey Weinstein wasn't currently in the midst of a, you know.
So let me clarify, based on your prediction that I'm going to get hate mail. If anybody, politician or plumber, commits a crime, that needs to be publicized and they need to be prosecuted. They need to stop.
Yes.
If someone has done something in the past that is interesting to us as...
Well, if it's salacious, now I'm agreeing with you. Right. If it's just like, do you know he cheated on his wife 10 years ago? I'm like, I don't really care.
That's what I'm talking about. So it's all that kind of stuff. The point is that anyway. So who else in the media recently in the last year have we, seen come out as being a sexual harasser?
So Kevin Spacey.
Yeah. What do we know about his behavior?
Man, this one was so tragic for me in that I thought the world of Kevin Spacey.
Yeah, I've never understood the Spacey worship. We have mutual friends who are like totally obsessed and have huge crushes on Kevin Spacey, and I've always just been like, yeah, I mean, he's a good actor, but
I've seen him in so many roles that blew me away, like his role in Seven or in Glenn Ross, or certainly in the first 2 seasons of the House of Cards.
Yeah.
And so when I think of Kevin Spacey, I've always thought, one of the best, some of the best to have played the game.
Oh.
And I always imagined he was this like cultured, super nice guy. That's what I always imagined.
Yeah.
And so when the first allegation came out from the Rent guy, I was totally shocked.
Is that Anthony Rapp?
Yeah, that guy.
Yeah.
I was totally shocked. And at the same time, I was like, well, do we know the whole story? Because then Kevin Spacey came out and he's like, this is horrible. If that actually happened, I can't believe it. And I'm so sorry. So part of me really wanted to believe him and be like, yeah, maybe there's more to the story. I don't know. Total benefit of the doubt. And then more stuff started coming out, and then more stuff,
and then more stuff, like stuff that's happening.
Yeah, like in 2016 and 20. So then I was like, oh shit! And then all the cast and crew from House of Cards, tons of stories about. I was like, oh no, this is serious.
Yeah.
But then I got sad again because what came out from his brother. Did you see that? His brother came out and said that the brother, was terribly abused, heavily abused by his father, and that he tried to protect his brother and sister, I believe, but he's not sure he was able to always protect them, so he doesn't know the extent to which Kevin Spacey might have probably been also abused by his father.
Interesting.
It's a depressing story.
Yeah, so Anthony Rapp said that Kevin Spacey was drunk and jumped on him and tried to have sex with him back in 1986 when Anthony Rapp was just 14 and Kevin Spacey would have been like in his 30s or something.
Yeah.
Kevin Spacey responded to the allegations against him on Twitter, saying, "I'm beyond horrified to hear the story. I owe him the sincerest apology for what would have been deeply inappropriate drunken behavior. And then he kind of goes on and says, I choose now to live as a gay man." Which was, and I remember the first time I read his response, I was like, oh, interesting. Like, the gay man bit threw me for a second.
Yeah.
Like it started out, I was like, oh, he's basically saying, I don't remember this happening, but I'm not denying it because
I'm gay.
It kind of, well, what he's saying is it kind of sounds like me. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
He's like, he wasn't like, oh my God, it's completely ridiculous. Right. I would never do that. He was like, I don't remember that. It was 30 years ago, and I'm really sorry if that happened. And by the way, I'm gay. And I remember like, oh, he's coming out of the closet. That's interesting. Dan Savage comes out and says, nope to Kevin Spacey's statement. Nope. There's no amount of drunk or closeted that excuses or explains away assaulting a 14-year-old child. And when I saw that, I was like, oh yeah, that's right. Of course, that's that. Why would I let him off the hook just for coming out as gay? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do know what you mean. Now, I've heard something that I have no direct knowledge of, but I had heard that because traditionally of the stigma of being gay and coming out and all these things, that there were often situations where older gay males would sort of take under their wing younger gay males to try to like bring them in and things like that. So I wonder if a 26-year-old gay Kevin Spacey with a deeply troubled past apparently was in fact confused and thought that he was just partying a little too hard.
Completely different phenomenon, right? A 40-year-old gay man who takes a 20-year-old gay man under his wing, so to speak, is and they have sober conversations and there's a lead up and a blah blah blah. That's a very different phenomenon than jumping on a boy,
on a 14-year-old.
Yeah.
and then the other one is it turns out,
and I'm guessing, just a side note, that Anthony Rapp, if you really heard his whole story, my guess is you wouldn't hear like, oh yeah, he was drunk and he just sort of pushed me down, and it was, it was just like, I'm guessing I'm guessing that
well, it left him traumatized.
Yeah, clearly. I'm guessing that Spacey, there was more details to that whole situation and the vibe of it.
Yeah,
that made Anthony Rapp feel
that's
like terrified.
That's a good point. And then actually, with all the stories that have come out, this wasn't an isolated incident.
Right. He's generally bullyish, and it's same with Weinstein. Right. You have these people who get off on abusing other people in addition to sexually.
One of the things that we've talked about before is, I wonder if things could be different for some of these people if, as they're coming up, they are not only allowed but encouraged to talk about their feelings, even feelings that sound bad.
Yeah.
Like if they were allowed to say, I'm sort of attracted to younger people. I'm sort of attracted to men. I'm sort of this. I'm sort of that.
Well, that's different than this.
Sadistic feelings. I sort of have.
Okay, so
all of it.
Yeah,
all of it.
Well,
because think about gay.
But
like
specifically,
people weren't allowed to talk about being gay.
But specifically to this episode's topic of sexual sadism, essentially.
Yeah.
The problem is that typically sexual sadists do not have empathy enough to say, I want to change this. You know what I mean? They don't have enough empathy for other human beings to say, like, I don't want to do this to people.
And that's fair. But just in the same way as it is irrelevant to the system, your level of empathy, when they teach you the things that will get you in trouble driving, they just tell you, you can't do this.
Right. So imagine that but there's such an inner drive, right? There's such an inner drive to satisfy this urge that it would be a tall order to might you invite some people who are like, you know what, I know I have this strong urge, but I would rather not go to jail. So in that way, I would say, absolutely. I've talked about this in other episodes before, that we need to have a different stigma around this, and we need to have more services and more inviting, and for sure. But I'm guessing that even if we were perfect in that way, there would still be a fair amount of sadists and sexual sadists that would just be like, well, but I like the way I am. You know, I like my pleasure zones.
Yeah.
I don't want to give that up, you know?
Yeah. And maybe it's not a winnable battle for everyone, or maybe even a sad majority. But I do wonder if you start the conversations young enough to where you haven't actually formed opinions like, but I like being a sadist.
Well, I'll even take it back further and say, wouldn't it be nice if we helped parents who were abusing these kids in the first place?
Imagine, I mean, this seems so radical and so foreign. Imagine if a parent was allowed to come and say, hey, my child is being abused by my husband, or even by me, right? That would be the extreme.
Yeah.
And that didn't necessarily immediately mean like what it currently means.
Well, what you think it means.
What I think it means.
What you think it means is your kids get taken away.
Yeah.
But actually that would never happen.
Yeah.
If a parent came forward and said that, CPS would be like, wow, good, great. Let's work on that. And we will protect you because you are coming forward.
Yeah.
Let's help.
But I
this
think
out.
people don't know that.
Of course they don't, because there's this very
Yeah.
there's a huge misunderstanding. There in most cases in my world, as therapists, we are actually we're mostly upset about CPS because they don't take kids away. That's the problem. In fact, I did a whole episode on this about CPS in which this kid ended up dying, and that was because CPS was too slow. Now, the reason why CPS is slow is because they don't have the funds to actually pay for all these kids to go to foster care or somewhere else. And so it's a matter of money is the thing.
Wow.
But anyway, and that's a matter of voters and taxpayers and political action to fund these sorts of things. But anyway, my point here is that one of the biggest things, and it's proven in the data, that we can do as a society to improve on many of these ills, including raising Weinsteins and Kevin Spacey's, is to provide services to families to help them with parenting, with eating, with chores, with childcare, with when you provide those services and you do these longitudinal studies, you see results in less sadism, less depression, less anxiety, better, less dropout, less substance use, all those things.
Yeah.
Because there's so many parents out there that, the average abusive parent, if they had someone that they could trust that was helping them in a very real way, it's not like they're going to be like, hey, get out of my way, I want to abuse my kids. What would happen is they would be like, oh, thank God I have some help. And they'll just be less abusive because they're less stressed out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or they'll be a little bit better behaved because there's a social worker around.
Right.
Or they'll be like, could you just take my kids away? Because I'm really, and they take, there's so many benefits to having these services for families. And some of the services actually aren't even that expensive. Like you just have a parenting, like a 5-hour parenting class over 5 weeks with a particular community, and they find that, and they follow up 20 years later, and they find that there's all these huge effects. Anyway, I just want to highlight. Getting back to Kevin Spacey, he's been, House of Cards has been canceled, and to me, good riddance. I think you agree.
No, I don't.
Oh,
like think about all the cast and crew, including her.
Oh well, but in terms of me, as
just as a watcher.
Yeah, like as a watcher.
Sure. No, I like
that show was
the first 2 seasons were unbelievable.
I would say like the first season and a half. The first season was amazing. I like
the first.
After that, I was just like, man, this is just gone complete. I could tell the writers were like, we have to go into their relationship more. Yeah. And to me, like, that was never the excitement of that show. The excitement was this guy who is, the first season was believable. Let's just put it that way. And he was an interesting character, and he talked to the camera, and he's like, and then he would slowly weasel his way. And he didn't have power too. He was like, he was just he was a powerful senator or representative, but he didn't have like, he had to bow down to certain people.
He wasn't ultra rich.
Yeah.
He didn't have absolute power in the Senate.
And so they had these, these interesting scenes where they're, on the rowing machine, and him and Robin Wright Penn would be like smoking cigarettes, and there's all these like really interesting. And he still seemed like a human being back then. And then after a while, they both turned into like these
complete psychopath.
These just crazy people, And so I just felt like they got. It happens all the time with some of these writers. I feel like they fall in love with it's like they crawl up their own asses or something. You know what I mean? They just like they get so disconnected with what is the core entertainment value.
To be fair though, and maybe they should just say, no, I won't do it past 2 seasons or something. When you're asked like, look, we'll just give you more money, but you need to write like more and more seasons, and the material doesn't lend itself, then it's just like, you're like, I don't know, fine, we'll go to war with Russia or something,
Right. Yeah. Or focus on another character, like with Fargo, for instance. That show is.
I don't watch it.
Oh, it's so good.
Is it?
Each season is a completely different set of people that are sort of related, and it's like then you're free to like start over.
Like The Wire was similar. Like each season focused on a different aspect.
Right. It's like the first season was all about McNulty.
Yeah.
And the kids. And the second season had McNulty was barely in it. I just remember like being like, whoa.
Yeah.
McNulty was the hero, and they just second season like, no, we're if we focus on McNulty, we're gonna run out of shit to talk about.
Right.
And anyway, so let's take a break. When we get back, let's wrap it up by talking about this other patron email and a few other people who have gotten in trouble. What do you say, Berto?
Yeah.
All right, we're back from the break. Boy, this episode is really becoming an epic episode. So just to rattle through here, we got Bill O'Reilly, Fox News. Fox paid 5 different women millions of dollars to be quiet about the sexual harassment from Bill O'Reilly. And then it became public, and then he was forced to resign. I want to point out, I'm pretty sure that Fox didn't fire him when they thought they could get away with it, but when it became public, then...
Right, and as far as I understand, he's now coming back with a huge contract.
Yeah. So Roger Ailes, the CEO of Fox News, became CEO when Fox News and Fox, the channel, became invented in 1996. He was accused of sexual harassment, and he resigned last year, and then he died 1 year later. We got Bill Cosby and all that kind of jazz. And we have Ben Affleck, who was actually really close to Weinstein in a lot of ways. He's trying to avoid a similar scandal because I think he's like looking at his past and he's like, man, I could get in the crosshairs pretty soon myself. And he's trying to come out ahead of it by tweeting and talking. And he's saying, I've been looking at my own behavior and addressing that and making sure I'm part of the solution.
Yeah, but he's not. I think the problem with him was more that some people, like what's her name, felt that he hadn't done enough because he knew about some of these stories.
Well, no, I think I'm interpreting, and maybe I'm wrong, but my interpretation of it was he's looking back at his life and he's like, there's a good chance that I could be next in line on this string of, the Kevin Spacey Weinstein thing, because he's well known. He's one of those guys where rumors follow him around, where he is a groper, and then let's see, Hillary Burton came out and said that he groped her breast, and then Ben Affleck tweeted.
But okay, but that's an example of like, I'm not denying she felt groped and abused and stuff like that, but it's like, do I imagine that at Hollywood parties with top Hollywood actors with lots of alcohol and drugs flowing,
that was not where it was.
Things were groped.
It was in the. It's interesting you're going there with your head. Again, this is that wishful thinking that keeps the status quo. Be open to the experience. That we're again, at the very least in your mind go like, well, I don't know the answer to that.
Well, I guess I would say what I would go with that would be like, then I would expect thousands of stories for thousands of people.
Well, what does it matter if Ben Affleck did it to one person?
You were about to correct me about the scenario. I don't actually know the scenario.
From my memory, it was as they were heading out at an Oscar or one of those award shows, as they walk out onto the stage or something, and he just grabbed her. He just grabbed her.
That
boot.
sounds way different.
He doesn't even know her. You know what I mean? And so that kind of stuff. I don't know the details. Casey Affleck. In
which by the way, and I don't know if you've seen this, but I've certainly seen this. the woman that walks up to another woman and says, "Oh my gosh, I love these," and grabs them.
That's not okay.
I agree, but that seems to happen quite a bit. Like I've seen it in multiple times in my life, and I don't go to crazy parties all the time.
Okay, I'm just gonna move on. Casey Affleck, 2010. Two women who had been working on "I'm Still There," that infamous movie. They filed sexual harassment suits against Casey Affleck. One of the women claimed that Casey Affleck crawled into bed with her without consent while she was sleeping, which is super creepy. Casey Affleck was sued for over $4 million, and both cases were settled out of court for an undisclosed amount. Louis C.K. Just today, people have come forward. 5 people have come forward.
But that I've heard about that for a while.
Right.
I don't understand why the same stories all of a sudden are news.
Right.
But I do understand, and it's good that it's finally like now sticking.
Right.
And that's another disappointing one. Like I really like that guy.
Yeah. So Jennifer Lawrence and some other people are trying to get together to call for an oversight committee in Hollywood to oversee this sort of thing. And I think that's great, but I don't think it's going to do enough because, again, we have a society that victim blames, and we have a paternalistic agenda. You know, that little bit that you had in your head, I just want to point that out, of when I said Ben Affleck, blah, 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 that resistance that you felt in your head, times 100, and that's like the rest of the country. You know, you're open to it because you're enlightened, but the rest of most people are not. You know, most people are just, their knee-jerk reaction is like, no, come on. Well, actually, Ben Affleck is hot, and I'm sure you're at a party, and I'm sure, you know, that everything.
But I wasn't, and I do agree with that point, but I wasn't actually saying that. What I was saying is, if Ben Affleck has been, I was wrong about the scenario. The scenario I had in my head was such that then I would imagine tons of guys getting in trouble. And probably girls too, like for groping at parties. That's what I was imagining, right?
But that's part of the whole thing of just like you in your head, instead of just being objective and being like, huh, I don't know the details, who knows? Instead of being like that, you're instantly skeptical of the account. You know, you're like, well, come on.
No, I didn't doubt it. I was more like, yep, I'm sure he did that, and unfortunately, I'm sure dozens of other guys did similar things.
Right. So there's this other thing that came out where they actually had a video of him groping someone, and then people were putting that up, and then the woman actually came forward and said, "No, it was fine." She was like, he wasn't abusing. Yes, he did grab me in that video, but
it was a skit.
It was what?
A skit.
It was
like, they did. It was a running joke between the two of them.
Well, what her main point was, it was consensual. You know what I mean? Yes, he did that. Yes, that's a video, but and yes, it looks like he's groping me, but I was fine with it. Was a thing. Okay. So again, it's our fault for continuing to be puritanical and shaming about sex. And it's our fault for perpetuating paternalistic ideas about women. As I've been saying before, if these women had been shot with a gun or stabbed with a knife or something, these women would feel a lot more safe to come forward. There's just a whole different reaction in our society when it comes to this sort of thing.
That one I say, like, you know, considering how many women don't come forward that they're being physically abused in a relationship, I don't know. I still don't know if that's right.
Perhaps not as readily to come forward as is what we would like, but much more likely to come forward. You know, there was that whole case of that guy on that British TV show about cars and stuff, and what's his face, like
Top Gear, punched
the producer. That whole thing was instantly talked about,
and most people supported him, and he's got another show that supposedly was doing better than the other show.
Right. So I'm not saying
which is a counterexample to your point.
No, it's not. My point is that instantly it was made known. That's the point. Is that victims being punched in the face they're not afraid to step forward as much as if they were raped or sexually assaulted.
Right.
Also, we continue to blame the victim. Donna Karen, a friend of Weinstein, she implied that the women in Hollywood put themselves in this position to be sexually harassed or assaulted because of the way they dress.
Yeah.
A woman in 2017 in America said that the Weinstein victims were assaulted because of the way they dressed. Now she came out later and apologized for it, but she basically she let that out of her mouth on like a TV show or something.
This is why we can't have nice things, because that's the kind of argument that you would see someone saying, that's why I need you to wear a full body burqa, because we can't trust you around men.
Alec Baldwin, he said, you know, as you were talking about earlier, that Rose McGowan delayed justice when she settled her case with him. And Rose McGowan called Alec Baldwin a wee little baby man on Twitter.
What? Okay, that's it.
Some of the Rose McGowan tweets are a little odd, but anyway. So, you know, just another example that I thought up off the top of my head in terms of evidence as to why our society is so screwed up about sex is the movie rating system. You have a movie like Taken or Captain Phillips, in which there's people shooting people with guns. The whole idea of Taken is a father who decides to go kill a bunch of people.
Yeah.
And proceeds to do that. And there's bullets, there's massive violence, rated PG-13. Taken and Captain Phillips are rated PG-13. Rushmore, rated R.
Wait, why?
Because there's brief nudity in Rushmore.
What? Wait, I don't even remember the brief nudity. That's crazy.
Rushmore, rated R. Taken, PG-13. A movie, Blue Valentine, with Michelle Williams and what's his face. There's a minor sex scene. It's basically a movie, a wonderful movie about, I think Patron Noel asked us to talk about this. A wonderful movie about God, what's his name from La La Land?
Oh, Ryan Gosling.
Yeah, Ryan Gosling and Michelle Williams. They basically fall in love, and then they skip forward in time, and their marriage is starting to fall apart, essentially. And that's all it is, you know.
There's a little bit of sex in there.
And there's a minor sex scene, and it was NC-17.
Wow.
And they changed, and actually Harvey Weinstein fought and reduced it to R. So if that doesn't show you how stupid we are about, you have movies where thousands of people are dying violently. That's okay for, a 13-year-old to watch.
Yeah.
You have a movie where there's brief nudity in Rushmore. Oh, no. You got to be 17 to watch that.
Yeah.
I think that says all I said. Okay. So I'm going to end here with an email from another listener here. And this is rough. So get ready.
Trigger alert.
Yeah. And I want to say that I Googled her story because it's in the news and confirmed it.
Jeez.
So as I tell the story, you're going to be like, what? And
oh my God.
This is in the news. Okay. Recently, I went through a major traumatic experience involving a therapist I was seeing. He sexually assaulted me. He threatened me and manipulated me, and I was terrified of him, so I didn't report him. I didn't know what to do. He ended up assaulting me 9 times.
Jesus.
I became suicidal and went to a crisis center, and they finally convinced me to report him. So again, I just want to pause. If she had a therapist who had punched her in the face every time they met, I just want to say there's a greater chance that she would have reported.
That's a fair point.
Yeah. I became suicidal, and when I went to a crisis center, they finally convinced me to report him. He was arrested by the police. When they asked him why he did it, he said, because I could.
Oh.
He was going to be arraigned on several felonies. The day before the arraignment, he killed himself.
What?
Yeah. And there's so many details I want to tell about this story, but I don't want to reveal the person. I feel somewhat responsible because I reported him. After his suicide, his family told me he had assaulted many of his clients, but no one ever reported him.
What? How did the family know?
That is a very good question.
That's
maybe
crazy.
Like in the investigation.
I see.
My life has been consumed by this, and I was diagnosed with PTSD. I would like to live my life without the constant intrusive thoughts. Before all this, I was mostly happy with my life. I am not sure what would help me at this point.
Wow.
It has been a number of months, and it still consumes my thoughts every day. I have a therapist, but it's been a very slow process. I listened to one of your podcasts that was related to my situation, and it helped me. I'm glad that people are talking about it. When you go through a trauma like this, you feel like you're all alone. Any thoughts, Berto?
That is, imagine you're going somewhere to get over things that are troubles in your life. Like I'm imagining, you know, I went to my therapist and I come in, I'm like, you know, I had a panic attack. And then things start coming out, you know, I was abused as a child. And as we're going through this, my therapist starts sexually abusing me.
Yeah.
That is, it's like, it literally is like going to the fire department that your house is on fire and they pour gasoline and light you up.
Yeah.
That is so insane.
Yeah.
I feel so bad for this person.
Yeah. It's depressing. It's the sort of thing, it is much more common than I thought it was. Before I had the podcast, I didn't hear about these stories.
Yeah.
And I become a bit of a lightning rod for these stories. And you know, I don't know the prevalence, but in terms of like the exact prevalence, but I have looked into some of the research. But anyway, the point is that this sort of behavior is not, you're not alone, listener. As you listen to other podcasts, you know, there are other therapists who are doing horrible things to their clients, and it's awful.
Yeah.
What I'll say to you, listener, is you're on the right path. You're going to therapy. You're talking about it. It takes time to recover. And you seem to be on the right path. But make sure that your therapist is qualified to treat PTSD, because not all therapists are. It's actually a very specific, to treat trauma, it's a very specific skill that some therapists think they know when they don't know. Like in the beginning of my career, I thought I knew how to treat trauma. And I quote unquote treated people for trauma, but I didn't actually know what I was doing, and I actually harmed people in the process.
Yikes.
The last thing I'll tell you, listeners, to not beat yourself up. You did the right thing. He was a criminal, and he needed to be stopped.
Yep.
And you did not cause his death. He caused his death. He committed suicide. He killed himself. He put himself in that position.
Yep.
He could have not put himself in that position. And also, it's quite possible that he had been suicidal for a long time.
It's like the guy from Enron that killed himself. You know, if you watch The Smartest Guys in the Room, and it's like, oh, did he kill him? Is it the fault of the people that finally started investigating all the wrongdoings of that company that he killed himself?
Right. Now, it's a traumatic event to suddenly realize that someone had killed themselves that you know, even if you don't like that person.
Right.
There's just something very abrupt about death occurring so quickly that rocks us to our core. So there's nothing strange about you being rocked to your core. But for you to beat yourself up or to think that you're responsible or something like that is I just want to tell you, and I'm sure you know this, that is not justified.
Yeah.
It's normal to have those feelings, but that is not fair to you at all. You were a victim of something. You were a victim of a criminal who was very good at committing crimes.
Right.
He was very good at doing it, had done it to a lot of people. He was very good about getting away with it. He knew how to scare people to the extent that they would rather just sweep it under the rug because, you know, and there's a lot of crimes like that.
Yeah.
And honestly, if someone walked up to me and said, you know, and like pointed a gun at me and said, like, give me your car, I know where you live, I'm going to kill you if you call the cops. I can't tell you if I wouldn't not call the cop. You know, like there's a chance I'll be like,
you get scared.
well, it's just a car. You know what I mean?
The perennial example are mob outfits that extort people for money.
Right. So this therapist, it sounds like he threatened you and made you very afraid. And so it's totally, you know, the situation is screwed. You know, it's just like when a criminal like this puts you in the crosshairs, there's no good answer. And anyone outside of, you know, if you've never been victimized in this way and you're just like, well, why don't you just report it? It's like, you don't have any idea what it's like.
Well, I can't believe this listener's bravery in actually reporting.
Yeah. I know, it's great.
That's incredible.
Yeah. And I can't tell you that I'm sorry that he killed himself, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not, he obviously was very busted up about this and decided to end his life. And, you know, I'm not saying that the world isn't worse off, you know? Yeah. But anyway, so what's the bottom line, Berto, about this epic episode?
Epic episode. Well, it is a very interesting time we're living in when all of a sudden closets of skeletons are being opened and skeletons are falling out and people are pointing fingers and people are starting to feel the repercussions. Yeah. And it's sort of like what would they call the Arab Spring when people voted, and this is sort of like a abuse spring or something. But anyways, I think that's really positive. I am hoping that at the same time we don't see a lot of cash grabs attempts by people, because, you know, I could also see people starting to, like, the whole, oh yeah, me too, yeah, I got abused too, yeah, I need some money, you know, because that's just gonna pollute and make it harder to discern who are the real victims and all these things. That
is very rare, actually. It happens for sure, but it's very rare that someone will come forward in that way. There's so many other ways to scam money that don't involve the consequences of all that. So,
well, so I hope that people keep getting encouraged to come out, and if there are currently people abusing their power in such a way, I hope they get scared of doing it and stop.
Yeah. Well, that does it for that episode of Psychology in Seattle. Thanks for joining us. Please take care of yourself because
you deserve it.